Okay. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the August 2024 meeting of the Houston Archaeological Society. My name's Bob Sewell, and I'm president of the Society, and I wish to welcome our speaker, Mr. Mike McBride. Mr. McBride is immediate past president and board member of the Hill Country Archaeological Society in Kerrville, Texas. Mr. McBride is also on the board of the directors for the Galt School of Archaeological Research. Mike is a lifelong member, a lifelong Texan, I should say, with over 45 years in pharmacy practice and management. Both during his time has accumulated extensive archaeological exposure and experience, including being the PI for the Hill Country Archaeological Society Crying Woman Ranch project based in Kerrville County. Mike's presentation this evening is on the Pine Ridge Pre-Ceramic project in North Belize, where he is also the co-director. The project includes recovery, documentation, analysis and curation of Paleo-Indian and pre-ceramic period artifacts. Please welcome Mike McBride. Over to you, Mike.
Okay, thank you, Bob. It's a real pleasure, real honor to be back with you guys. Let me there you go. I really enjoyed the previous talk there on our work at the Crying Woman Ranch. I know a number of you were out with us in April. Was that April? I guess for the invitational event there, and that turned out really well. And by the way, Bob, as you asked me at the end of this, I do have some slides, just a few slides from the invitational event. And a couple of slides of more recent stuff that has gone on there if we have the time. Okay. So I was able to load up a few of those. So
okay, we have time.
Good. So anyway, this is a project. The Pine Ridge Pre-Ceramic project is about it's really about 2 years old. In its inception, getting it together, actually doing now 2 years of field work there in Belize. It's been remarkable, as you'll see in many facets. Not only application to Maya, well, it's not Maya archaeology. It is, let me advance here. This is a huge file, so it may take a moment for it to advance every time. You can do it. Okay, found the right button. So yeah, just a little verbiage. Most of you who do know me, from the work in Texas with the Kerr County or the Hill Country Archaeological Society. Prior to that, I actually ran the Dallas Archaeological Society, and we did field work and meetings there in Dallas up until the group joined the North Texas group over in Tarrant County. But like I was saying, prior when we first got on a while ago, this is actually the 40th year that I've been involved in Maya and Mesoamerican archaeology and studies. It started with Linda Shealy's Maya Studies group at UT. I was kind of an avocational attendee and participant in a lot of the epigraphic work that was going on there, the decipherment of Maya glyphs. Built a great group of friends and colleagues who allowed me access to a lot of their archaeological work. They're on site in Mesoamerica, in the Maya area, and a lot of the very important publications that were coming out. Not so much as an advisor, but as a part of the conversation as a lot of this stuff developed. I was very, very fortunate. So what John and I are doing here, here in Belize, is just a continuation of all that. Some of you know John. I think he's been a lifelong Houstonian. He has multiple years. He's had multiple years' experience in Belize, directing the Blue Creek project down there, and also a few other projects in Belize. So when we first started talking, and I'll get to that, he and I found out this was a great fit between us. So, like I said, I first started out in Maya studies about 40 years ago. It's been a very, very interesting set of experiences with a lot of travel in the Maya area, to not every site, not every ruin, but very, very many ruins, and being able to get very, very deep knowledge of Maya culture. And it's been a fascinating, continues to be a fascinating time. One of the real keys was about 9 years ago, after doing a lot of travel and work in Guatemala and Mexico, never really having set foot in Belize, I met up again with Kat Brown. Some of you know Kat Brown and Jason Yeager. They're at UT San Antonio. They have run a very large, important project in Belize for, I believe, 20 years or more. They've run a number of grad students and developed, handfuls of PhD students in these projects. Plus, they're really, really great people. And you may have met Kat before here, and then here we were. This is several years ago in their camp there in Western Belize. But really, this was a time about 9 years ago where I thought I'd climbed enough ruins and all that, and traveled enough, that I really was looking for something really more focused. And about 20 years ago, I fell into flint knapping, and what they offered me was the chance to be on site with them with their project as an avocational, and opened up a lot of doors in Maya and Mesoamerican lithic studies, and I also started doing some of my own church surveys there. There are areas, there's not a whole lot of church in Houston, but for several reasons, I live in Fredericksburg. And, the hill country, Central Texas, is one of the richest sources of very high quality chert in North America, certainly in North America. And Belize is somewhat like that. Parts of northern Belize are as rich in fine-grained chert as anywhere in Mesoamerica or North America. So I was able to travel around the country, and some church sources are known. I documented a dozen more that really weren't on the books and things like that. and was able to do some teaching, some workshops down there with some of their group. Another group. This is a group from California Riverside who works in southern Mexico, southern Yucatan, and it really gave me a real enthusiasm and purpose to be down there and continue with this line of studies, but very, very, very focused on the lithics. Every year, up until COVID, every year the Belize Institute of Archaeology has put on a national symposium every June. And the neat thing about doing archaeology in Belize is, number one, they speak English and they publish in English. But the Institute, as part of your permitting process, they require you every year to provide them with a full report, and then at the annual, and now it's semi-annual. It's every 2 years now after COVID. All of the projects in the country come and give a report at the symposium. So at these over 3 days, you get to see all of the archaeology, the projects, which is currently about 18 of them, going on in the country, and it's a great learning experience. There's a whole band of American academics who have run these projects, and it's been really great to be part of that group. But you see everything from excavation of Maya ruins to some of the ecological work that they're doing, and it's really been neat. But part of my interest in the lithics was there has been a very, very, very limited catalog of what we call pre-ceramic. When I say pre-ceramic, it's literally pre-Maya. The Maya culture really kind of got going right around 1000 BC, and what brought that on was basically the domestication of corn, the domestication of maize came to Belize and that area right around that time, 1500 to 1000 BC. Corn agriculture started in southern Mexico, Oaxaca. That area was the first inklings of the domestication of wild grass. It was domesticated into very small corn cobs, things like that. That agriculture spread into all the way down the Pacific coast into South America. South America had corn by about 4000 BC. And then it's kind of a retrograde of technology where corn agriculture actually landed in Belize and the Caribbean coast around 1500, maybe 1000 BC. And that caused the hunter-gatherer cultures to start forming villages. They became sedentary, things like that. And of course, when you start growing things in a domesticated manner and cooking things, generally you start making pottery. So when we say pre-ceramic, it is pre-Maya. It is what we call probably the Middle Archaic period, to 2000 BC and before, 4000 years BP. That to us is the pre-ceramic period. And that was the main line of study that John was interested, has always been interested in. And it was one of those real opportunities that we saw. because the assemblage of pre-ceramic, archaic and uh, Paleo-Indian period, Clovis period artifacts in Belize, at this point, like 6 years ago, was less than 20. There were less than 20 pieces of really well diagnostic Paleo-Indian aged lithics in the country, and published. So I was familiar with the lithics. I was familiar with the scarcity of them. It was just something that I carried around. I got to see a lot of Maya lithics, but that was there's a ton of those, but these were very, very rare. So in the meantime, I've always gone to the artifact shows, and some of the bigger ones around the country, certainly in Texas and around the country. And about 5 or 6 years, about 4 years ago, I started seeing some of the same lithics as were published, and I saw in Belize to a very limited extent. I started seeing them in these shows in American collections, and which really, really got my interest. I don't know whether any of y'all have worked in the very murky world of artifact collectors, but it takes a while to begin a conversation with them, get them to trust you, which I was able to do. I was very fortunate to have a couple of friends who are fairly big time collectors, and they trusted me enough to start giving me some information of where some of these artifacts are coming from. I mean, from the start, everybody knew they were coming out of Belize, but it was, well, that's all well and good, but it was nobody knew where or anything like that. And so finally, I gained enough trust of a couple of these guys to actually find out where they were coming from. So I actually, on one of my annual trips to Belize or whatever, I did get an introduction to a couple of the local folks there in northern Belize, and we became friends. I got their trust, and so they started introducing me around to some of the local people there in northern Belize. That was right around the time in the summer of 22 when John and I had kind of been talking, because I'd seen a few of these in Belize or whatever, and he really, really got interested. So in September, he and I went down there for a week, got introduced to more people, a lot of the local folks there in the villages, and it was just astounding. The number of artifacts these folks had, these are really, really rural folks. It took a few minutes. We had our main guy here in the blue is his name is Areño, and he was actually born and raised in August Pine Ridge in the village, and his family's there. He's related to about half the people in the village and friends with the rest of them, and the whole area there. He's very well known. So he and I became good friends, and so he introduced us around, and so we came out of this trip just incredibly enthused, and so we started planning for a formal project. So we got ourselves together, did a bit of very furtive fundraising, and so wrote up the permits. John had done it before, so he's handling all of that. And then I got to know the landowners down there in the village council. So he got things good with the Institute of Archaeology for the permit, and then I got the landowners to sign off on it. So as of the winter and spring of 23, we were off and running. Um, our first field season was in May of 23. This is the core group. John met up with starting from the left is Sebastian, who is a French national archaeologist who's actually based in the Caribbean, but he's been a Paleo-Indian specialist and published on Paleo-Indian archaeology in Mesoamerica and South America for years. So he joined us. We added Abby, the young lady who is a undergrad at Rice, who's thinking about pursuing archaeology and museum studies. Some of y'all probably know Jason Barrett. I don't know whether Jason was from Houston, but he was very active at TAS. He's now in Canada, but he's good friends with John. He does lithics, so he came with us. Some of y'all met Tori Pagano there at the Invitational. She's a professional archaeologist with Terracon with John, and just a incredibly hard worker. So she kept the field work, the recording, all of the documentation and everything like that. She got it all together, and it was just great. She's been kind of the core for 2 years with John and me. So it's been a great experience with her. Just as a sidelight, we spent a lot of money in this restaurant because it's air conditioned. Plus the food is great. But most of all, they have great onion. Our standard is great onion rings. Because all of the restaurants there, even the Chinese restaurants, everybody there makes onion rings, but Sabor makes the best. So this is where we are in the northeast corner, northeast part of Belize. It's not a great big country. You have, if y'all can see the pointer, you have Mexico up here, the Caribbean is over here. You have the Rio Hondo, which is the river border with Mexico, and then over here is Guatemala. So we're kind of up here in the northeast. We can see Mexico about 3 or 4 miles away from our sites there in August Pine Ridge. So this is what we were facing in August Pine Ridge. The area is a very large, long, ancient sand dune or sand beach. For the most part, the top layer of sand is a very, very fluffy white sand, like you see in Florida, like Destin, that area. But it's really, really ancient. This sand has been mined in these very shallow pits, just surface digging, since the 50s. So the whole landscape looks, it's pitted, it's dug up. It looks like a real bombing range. And this is miles of this work. This sand used to be covered with enormous pine forests. Most other plants won't grow in the sand because it's too acidic. Corn won't grow here, so there's actually no Maya ruins in this area because the Maya couldn't live here because they couldn't grow corn in the sand. But the Mennonites came in from Canada in the 50s and logged out all of the pine forests, scraped off the land for farming and burned it for cane fields and cattle ranches. So this is kind of where this is our where we're working. And so the sand mining is a really important story, because the sand mining's been going on since the 50s, and basically there's no machinery. The system is that the guys pull in these enormous dump trucks. The guys, dig the sand pits by hand and hand load these trucks. And this is their living. This is what they do. There's crews of 4 or 5 guys in a gang. Takes them about an hour. A big truck like this takes 4 or 5 guys about an hour to fill it up. The truck goes to local construction sites, gets thrown in the cement mixer, and most of the better buildings there are all concrete block. So they use a lot of concrete, a lot of cement, and so this is one way that industry gets supplied. These guys are not looting, obviously. They're not digging up Maya ruins or anything like that. But if you can see down here at the bottom, these artifacts, these flint, the chert lithics come out of the sand as they're digging. It's a real random, but they, they'll find this stuff in the sand and keep it, because obviously, it's not going in the sand. It can't go in the cement mixer, but they can recognize flint and everything, so they just keep the stuff. So yeah, I'll give you a little look here. If I can get to it. There you go. This is what it looked. Can y'all see that?
Yes.
Okay. So these 3 guys here are brothers. The oldest brother gets to drive the truck. And the guys in the back, there's 1 or 2 guys in the back who are cousins. So it's, there's really no schedule to it. It's just whoever is building something, or the older brothers who drive the trucks, they'll get a call from somebody local there who's got a building project, and call their brothers and cousins and tell them the truck will be there in about 30 minutes. And so they come out of the village and spend an hour filling one of these things for about $25 Belize, which is $12.50 US per truck. And this is how they make their living. So what ends up is what we have found in the village, as we've met the people around the village, is almost every household has a box. And in those boxes are all of this stuff that their uncles and fathers and brothers and cousins have just put in their pockets, put in their backpacks out in the sand pits and brought home. It's just these heirlooms that the families have, that have been, part of their, they've been part of the families, and just it's one of those. It's just one of those things, and we were just astounded by the number of of artifacts, even though some of them are Maya. The vast majority of the artifacts that have come out of these sand pits are pre-ceramic, because the Maya just weren't there. So one of the initial questions was, okay, if you had like a 3 or 4 mile wide by about 5 or 6 mile long ancient sand ridge, and a pine forest, there's no rivers there. The closest rivers are 3 miles away. And if there was activity there, where was the water? And so as we started really doing the land, the ground research, um, we knew that there were some of these low bajos things there, and the guys were talking to us about where they were digging and things like that. So from the maps, here's the village, here's the main road that goes north and south, and there's about between the small village and the hinterlands around it, population is about 4,000. Here, this is a little bit better map to show where we are up in northeastern Belize. And so looking at the maps and talking to the guys, we figured that some of these bajos were probably old ancient springs. They were water sources. And so any occupation that we would be looking for would be theoretically close to this. And the guys who were finding the artifacts were telling us about the areas where they had been digging and where this stuff was coming out at. And sure enough, a lot of it was around. You can see that by the arrows, these low areas, these low ponds, that probably were ancient springs, because the ground, bedrock here, the overlying sand and clay and everything down to dolomite bedrock is only about 20 feet. So you have these shallow springs or whatever, but the remnants seem to still be there. And what we were finding in the artifacts seemed to prove that out. So we started our search for undug ground, since so much of the ground has been dug and is disturbed and whatnot. We went looking for these patches of undug ground, which we named the Paleo Islands. And sure enough, where we really ended up excavating and surveying was within those circles, where what I showed you over here on the east side, around around the water sources, either modern and probably ancient. And it turned out that we were pretty much right, that there was occupation here in all of them. And this whole area was occupied many times during the pre-ceramic period. So this is what one of them looked like. These were patches of undug ground, maybe 30 meters across. We could find them because they still had little trees on them, little bushes on them that hadn't been rolled over or burnt or whatever. And like you can see how fine that sand is there. And so the excavation and screening in our units went really quick and easy, because the sand was on the top layers was pretty loose, and from the surface down, in most layers we were finding, at least we really never found anything diagnostic over the 2 years in situ. but there was plenty of debitage in the layers and for the screens to catch. We did some surveying as well around on some of the truck roads or whatever. This was one really interesting spot here from last year, that on one of the truck roads, the night before we had a real hard rain and washed some of the sand off. And we found this patch of what it was a scatter of debitage, and what it turned out to be, we found these bigger flakes, some bigger reducing flakes, some really small stuff, and basically this was a napping station that was at least 4,000 to 5,000 years old, that the rain had uncovered. Probably a couple of nappers there doing some work or whatever got up and walked away from it. So this was a bit of an insight. At least we knew that there was occupation there, but it's real scattered. So like I said, we were able to put in some a number of test units around within about a half-mile area in various places. We didn't find any diagnostic material, but there was culture, there was debitage, and lithics in every unit that we put in. So the occupation area, we don't know what we don't know where the end is, but we do know that throughout this area of the sand ridge, there were people there through just about all of the pre-ceramic periods. We did our own lab work. We were fortunate enough to home base out of a very nice small apartment complex in Orange Walk, which is it's the regional capital in the north part of Belize. And so we lived pretty well in air-conditioned apartments with a kitchen, and had enough room to set up our lab. This was Abby's first year, and so Jason was training her in some lithic identification and all of that. I didn't realize that was there. Sorry. We were able also we did get invited to come out to one of the local high schools. One of the teachers invited us out. So we got to give a presentation on our work in Belize archaeology and Belize history, things like that, to about 120 high school students, which was really neat, because one of our commitments to the Institute was public engagement, education, things like that. So this was a really neat day. And then also during our 3 weeks there, we had visits from professionals from the Institute of Archaeology, showing them what we were doing, and then giving them a workshop on the lithics that we were studying, that had been literally loaned to us by the village people. And then we had professionals from 2 of the other local projects in northern Belize who came and spent 2 days with us to see our work there. So it was really kind of neat to have other people looking at what you were doing, because nobody else is really successfully doing studies in pre-ceramic archaeology in Belize. There's a couple of projects that are trying, but unfortunately, they're in the wrong place. We were fortunate enough to somehow land in exactly the right place for the study of pre-ceramic Belize. So, two field seasons, you know, a lot of background reading and uh, journal, journal collections, things like that. So, um, in our current catalog over two field seasons, um, and almost strictly all pre ceramic artifacts. Our total catalog right now is somewhere north of 160 entries. Half of those are pretty well diagnostic Paleo-Indian period, fluted uh, fluted biface material, things like that, which is 5 times more, maybe 4 times more than was ever recorded in any of the assemblages in all of Belize archaeology. So we were incredibly fortunate to follow this path, meet these people, and then gain their confidence where the local, the local people, the owners of this stuff, or the keepers of this stuff, were actually loaning it to us for study. So what we think we know about this area is kind of starting with the Maya, which was 1,000 BC, and the classic period. Classic period Maya was from about 300 AD to about 900 AD. So there are classic period Maya artifacts there. I mean, every Maya collection from the United States to the museums, every collection has these big, long prismatic these big blade knives. You've probably seen these before, and there are tons of them throughout Belize. There are a few of them that have been found in northern Belize, but not that many, because they are indicators of classic Maya, and the classic Maya weren't in this, weren't in our area. And also, we have maybe 10 really crummy little potsherds. So there's no ceramics either. And everywhere the Maya went, they made ceramics. So the absence of the ceramics is another kind of indicator of the time periods, the time period that we're in, which is pre-ceramic. So although we were introduced to a landowner, Don Chicho, who was the uncle of one of our workers, and he took us over to his land, or they took us over to his land, and we started seeing, what we started out seeing, if you can see this photo here, this little block, just a little corner of this block sitting out of the, coming up out of the sand, which looked really odd because there's no big rocks there. There's nothing but sand and bush. But in one of the dug pits, there was this thing poking out. So we kind of, scratched around on it. And then all of a sudden it kept getting bigger and bigger. And then we were poking around over here and over here. And there were a few more. And then came back the next day and just kind of, started digging around on it some more. And we started finding more and more of these big blocks. We didn't know what they were. They said nobody in the village had ever seen anything like this, because big hard stone like this just does not occur in northern Belize. So over a period of about the last half, about 12 days of the field season, we excavated. We kind of laid out a test unit of about 6 meters by 3, and started excavating down And you can see, you know, I threw this in to give you an idea of how big these things were. It's not a quarry site because this is quartzite, and quartzite does not occur in northern Belize. You know, around us, within 5 or 6 miles of us, there's limestone, but quartzite comes from the Maya Mountains, which are 90 miles away. So, you know, this is a huge puzzle as far as how these got here, what they're doing there. But you can see how large, I mean, these are, you know, 500 to 600 pounds a block. So this was a bit of a clue. This was laying under one of those rocks that we excavated. It looked totally out of place. It's quartzite too, but it's not a fragment that was chipped off. It's something else. So we collected this and curated it, and it's in our catalog. We don't know exactly what it is, but the more we excavated, and this is the last day. This is the whole block. This is 6 meters across here. This is 18 or 19 feet by about 10 feet wide. So this is a big area that we were able to clear off. But you may not be able to see it on your screens, but on some of these blocks were broken. They were purposely broken because you have hammer marks, you have hammer scars in the margins. If you can see this right here and here, you can see hammer blows along the margins of some of these fractures. So these at one point were all one rock. These up here have the same thing. They have hammer blows up here. These were all one block at one point. So it's like nothing we've ever, nothing we've obviously seen, nothing like anybody has ever seen in the area. So the question was, they were scattered on purpose. They were broken on purpose. It's not a quarry site. They weren't making things out of these. So what is it? Who knows? We don't know. We've got one guess, because the closest Maya city is about 5 or 6. It's about 5 miles away. It's called El Bocito. Over here on the map, you see it over here on the right-hand side. We named this site, of course, Monument Valley, which I thought was very cool. But El Bocito was actually excavated, partially excavated back in the 70s, and maps were drawn. And it's on some of the archaeological maps. But when I started looking at it, when we got back home and I started really looking at this stuff, and found some of the paperwork, found the articles back from the 70s on El Bocito, because we knew it was there. And I started mapping it in. What I found is the two, you can see the two main acropolises of the city here, which are right here. When you map in Monument Valley, it is less than 1 degree off of due west. We know that the Maya sometimes made directional markers for their cities, their territorial boundaries. They did go out in the hinterlands to mark areas away from their cities with stone markers, sometimes a shrine, something like that. And a lot of times they're in the cardinal directions. So that's our initial guess. We ran out of time, and we know that we didn't get everything. I mean, we got these blocks here, but I mean, even when we had to refill the whole block, we had to refill the whole pit when we left. And as we were kind of borrowing sand around the edges or whatever, we hit 2 or 3 edges of other blocks. So we know there's more there. But what it is, this is the best guess we have. So, that's the extent of our interest in the Maya. So pre-Maya, pre-ceramic, when corn agriculture was first starting, they started making farming tools, which are these adzes. These are very early, maybe 3,000, 3 to 4,000 years, kind of pre-farming and whatnot, but they're really diagnostic of the latest pre-ceramic artifacts, and they're found all over Belize. And then we have these macroblades, these big flakes, that are right in that late archaic period, pre-ceramic. They were used for butchering, grass cutting, things like that. But there's a bunch of these big blades in the local collections. The interesting thing is the same technology is found throughout the Caribbean, because the same technology is found in Cuba, in Dominica, in Haiti, and in the Dominican Republic. So you start to get the feeling that there was long-term or long distance communication, technology sharing, things like that, even in these archaic times. There was also a lot of these groundstone artifacts, these big conical mortars, pestles rather, and then these ground stone bowls like this. You just don't find those. Number one, you don't find them in any Maya artifacts, because the Maya were using manos and metates. So the theory is that these were kind of the precursors of the mano and metate back in these archaic times, when corn and other domesticates were just starting out. So there's a bunch of these stone bowls that we've got in the assemblage, that Sebastian is doing a lot of work on this stuff, both in the Caribbean and in Central America. And then for whatever reason, we find a lot of these really, really nice stone balls. They're anywhere from a ping pong ball to a tennis ball. They're really not kind of river cobbles. They're more pecked and ground. We don't know what they are, but they're pre-ceramic, and they'll need to be a paper on them at some point. And so in the lithic continuum, the lithic sequence, going back in time now into the middle archaic, as we would know, the middle archaic, early archaic, back 5 to 8,000 years ago. What happened is biface technology. What we know as biface technology pretty well disappeared, because a lot of the Maya technical lithic technology was core and blade, and uniface technology. So we find these archaic, these points here probably are about 6 to 7,000 years old, but for the most part they're on. These were biface technology. So one of the main players here, that probably goes back to the transitional paleo, are these low points. These are like nothing you've ever seen. You can see how big they are from the photograph in the bottom left. They're great big look like harpoon points. They're big and heavy. Um, we suspect that they were used for hunting manatees in the rivers, somewhere in the freshwater. Very large game with these points though. But they're very common in the assemblage. Although they're not common throughout the rest of Belize, on the Pine Ridge, there are a lot of these. We have at least 50 in the catalog, and there's been one or two found in context in southern Belize that Keith Proofer is dating prior to 9,000, maybe as old as 10,000, well in the transitional paleo time period. You know, this is just this has turned out to be one of my pets. So I'll be doing the lithic workup on this. But it's really an amazing technology and a set of artifacts. This was really new. We found we when I say found, we were presented and loaned these artifacts, and in the loans that were made from us, from the village folks, was this set of points and point fragments that looked like, of course, nothing you've ever seen before, nothing we had ever seen before. They're not documented in any Belize archaeology, but they're very, very distinctive. So since they hadn't been published before, John and I, John let me name them Pine Ridge points. So that's in the lexicon now. But as you can see, they're like nothing you've ever seen before. Most of them are bifaced. Some of them are unifaced on bigger flakes, but most of them are really nice, elegant, thin bifaces. This is one that was loaned to us this year. It's the most pristine one that we've seen. Some of them are bigger. They're 5 inches long. They're really thin and really well made. Probably hafted on that really thin stem. Maybe it's a hunting point. We don't know, but this is totally unique to Belize archaeology and Mesoamerican archaeology. And we're to the point where we've got a collection of almost a dozen fragments now. So what I proposed is we really start, as we study these things and the behaviors that form these things, I've gone ahead and separated them out into two types, where the type 1 is this, where you get the really nice rounded shoulders on the really thin stems like this, and the shoulders are pretty rounded. And then the type 2s, the shoulders it's not notching, but the shoulders are really well developed, and it's just because I've duplicated both of these now in my flint knapping, and it's almost like you got to plan them out from the very beginning, that you're actually going to make something that looks like this, not something that looks like this. So when we talk about Paleo-Indian behavior and technology, this is going to turn out to be a really interesting study of those examples. They're very close in technology and appearance to these Paihan points that came out of Peru back in the 70s in a late Paleo-Indian site there in Peru. And then this one other one came out of early archaic, late Paleo area in Trinidad, the island off the coast of Venezuela. So these are the comparable uh, the comparable pieces we have from other sites, other contexts. So there again, just like those big macro flakes, you get the feeling that some of this technology was shared. The other sets that we have, although most of them I've seen in private collections, we did get some of these unfluted lancelets, pretty clearly late Paleo-Indian technology. Fred Valdez published this one a couple of years ago, but he was loaned it from a family in August Pine Ridge. So we're very certain that all of these collections somehow came out of the August Pine Ridge area. And these are kind of comparable. John found this with a site in southern Mexico down here. These unfluted lancelets were done by Scotty McNeish very early on, back in the 60s, and they are kind of comparable. They're the closest thing we found, and perhaps during this period of time, 10 to 11,000 years ago, after they stopped fluting points, these might be some really early examples of what they were doing during that period of time with the lancelets. This is one of the very few pieces that we found in situ. We don't know what it is. There's not enough of it. It's kind of small, but it's like nothing we have seen. It's thin, it's bifaced, it's got a bit of a bevel on it, but there again, we don't know what it is, and there's nothing like it in any of the literature. So this is going to take some work. The real stars of the show are the fluted bifaces. Like I said, prior to when we started cataloging, the entirety of Belize archaeological assemblage of fluted bifaces was less than 12. So far, we have close to 50 pretty secure specimens and fragments that we can pretty solidly assign to the Paleo-Indian Clovis interval, or fluted biface interval from 12 to 13,000 years ago. When you talk about one of the real keys to why this place is so important is because we have these specimens here. These are ours, but for years there have been these fishtails excavated in South America, in both southern Chile and also Argentina and Uruguay. These fishtails have been very, very well represented in those assemblages in South America. And so when you take these fragments here, I mean, like this stem here will directly, you take like this one here, that stem will lay directly on top of that thing. And that blade there will lay directly on top of that piece right there. So it's really astounding that this technology was traveling north out of South America, but these type things have really not been found anywhere else in Mesoamerica. So yeah, like I said, they're fluted. Like the stem is probably broken in the half, fluted on both sides. This stem is fluted on both sides. This one was about finished. It got one flute in it over here. The other side is not fluted. This might have been a manufacturing failure, but it's clearly that South American technology. Then we have a whole bunch of what look typical Clovis bifaces. And they look just like, what you'd see out of Galt or, someplace like that. We've got a lot of fragments. What we're using as one of the main diagnostics is the overshot flaking. A lot of these fragments are clearly overshot. Even some of the stems do have fragment have some overshot characteristics in it. So we're putting some of these in the traditional Clovis category. But the most prevalent, we've got 3 pieces of the fishtail. We've probably got 10 or 12 pieces of the traditional Clovis morphology, but this wasted fluted biface is by far the most prevalent in the assemblage. And when we say wasted, it's got kind of a drawn in, a recurved waist on the stem. It's real diagnostic. Usually they're fluted, although this is only fluted on one side. Usually they're fluted. Sometimes they're overshot, sometimes not. Sometimes they're bifaced. Sometimes you can see this is a uniface. This is made on a flake here. And these came to us this year from a family that we hadn't talked to before. But you can see the elegance of these things that these are all the wasted fluted bifaces with a drawn in stem. Really, got good fluting on them. Some better, some longer than others. Clearly, this one was made on a flake, so they're using uniface technology on big flakes. Sometimes with this, with this technology, with this form. The cool thing is we've got a lot of failures. I actually, and obviously the failures are going to tell us a lot about the sequence, how the technology, what they were doing with these things. And so these samples here were really cool because in the last month, actually, I found some time to do some replication, although I didn't put the photographs in here. But all 3 of these guys here, I'm pretty sure are fluting failures. What'll happen with these bifaces that are not supported right, they'll get the blade real well finished. They'll get the blade just all finished and then set up the ridge to do the fluting. But if it's not handled right or supported right, that stem will snap off really cleanly right there at the upper part of the stem. And I'm pretty sure these 3 guys here are they're not hafting failures, they're fluting failures. So that's what I say. I mean, this is telling us so much about really, really old lithic technology. And also what I'm seeing is we have recurring chert types. You see this really nice orange, reddish material here, and then this translucent orange, reddish material here. This is not the same, but we find this style of chert with kind of creamy modeling in it, creamy inclusions in it. It's really great stuff. So there again, we can kind of recognize, this little biface here was setting up. It was overshot. It was probably going to be a wasted fluted point, but the stem was not right. The stem was too thin, and so they just let it go. They just didn't use it. And then this little guy here was really interesting because this was just kind of a wasted. I mean, it was just kind of a piece that somebody picked up, kind of worked on it a little bit, and then tried to flute it, and the fluting failed. It was this is a true fluting failure from the fluted face's end, which was really, really interesting. So they were practicing on junky pieces too. So so we're categorizing these as fluted, fishtail fluted, the wasted fluted, the wasted fluted technology. And then here's some of the pieces of the traditional Clovis. None of these are really finished, but the fluting preparation, the fluting failures, and that are all pretty well identical to what we see in North America. So by far, what we have found ourselves in there through a lot of luck is definitely the most prolific fluted biface site in all of Central America. There's another site in Panama that has a lot of fluted bifaces in it. It was a quarry site for fluted biface technology. There's another site up in way far north Mexico, but between there are not that many Clovis aged sites, and this by far is the most prolific. And what what this is showing is that, and especially when you start studying Clovis, the Clovis interval, is that all of a sudden 13,000 years ago, 12,500 years ago, all of the people in North America and South America and Middle America were all doing fluted biface or fluted uniface technology all at the same time. Some of them, like the northern, like the traditional northern Clovis, are not the same as the South American fluted bifaces, the fluted fishtails. But that technology was flowing south. South American technology was flowing north. And it all three of these happened to come together all in northern Belize for some reason, because this is the only site where all three of these fluted biface forms at a single site are found anywhere. Okay. So what John says is bidirectional. The technological influences are coming north, south. They're ending up all in the kind of the center of the hemisphere, which is pretty cool. And we can show that this little patch of sandy ground has been occupied for about 13,000, continually occupied for about 13,000 years. So we really appreciate. I really appreciate. I told the guys I really appreciated the invitation, because a lot of this stuff from stuff that I'd done early on, I'd not looked at, and gave me the opportunity. But I'll be very, very happy to. I do have some of the other slides, but I'd be very happy to answer some questions about this.
Thanks, Mike. That was great. Appreciate it.
That was very interesting, Mike. I think we've got a few questions in the chat. If
we do indeed, yes.
Yeah. Sarah, do you think you could go through the chat questions?
Sure, you bet. Got a couple of questions from Jack. The first one is, he wants to know about the legal status of acquiring artifacts from Belize, right? About surface collecting. I know you mentioned in the beginning part of it about permit requirements, but if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, by law, any archaeological artifact, any artifact belongs to the people of Belize. Obviously, these boxes of these artifacts or whatever that, you know, they're not being sold, they're not being traded, they're just they're kept under the family bed. The what we have arranged, the understanding that we have now, and for the most part, well, the Institute of Archaeology is fine with it. We have loan agreements. The project has loan agreements with everybody who has loaned us their material, and that constitutes at least 10 families from the village. So we have agreements with them to keep, study, curate their possessions. We are bound to document everything to the Institute. Last year, our whole catalog, we took it to the capital city and turned it in to the Institute. They really didn't do much with it, but they held it for a year. We increased, we got our boxes back at the beginning of the year, and through this year, we added at least 60 new entries into the catalog. We documented all that back to the Institute when we left, but they gave us an export permit. You know, most of it remains in a secure location in Orange Walk now, and it's all boxed up, it's all cataloged. Everybody knows where it is. We know where it is. But it's really rare for the Institute to allow a project to export really important artifacts like this in quantity at any time. But the Institute understood that to do a proper job on this really important stuff, we need to have it for an extended period of time, so we can do our analysis. The plan is on many of the more important pieces to get them cast and really open up a lot of educational opportunities with this. So yeah, we did legally, we did get an export permit from the Institute. The better part of this collection is in the United States right now, in an undisclosed location. But we will have the opportunity for 2 years to study and analyze this and do our write-ups. So legally, we made very, very sure that everybody's really cool with all of this.
Thanks. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? I know moving artifacts internationally is yeah. There are a lot of for good reason, good laws on that.
Yeah, I mean, it took a year for the folks, and they, John knew some of these people, and we were very upfront with them as far as what was going on and everything. Really even my work with some of the collectors. You just gotta build the trust. And so we had asked them, and they said, yeah, make us a list. And we gave them a list of 60 pieces, and they said, okay, here's your permit. So yeah, it's a lot of the stuff that you saw, we are currently being able to study now here.
That's great.
Yeah.
There's a second question from chat, also from Jack, actually wondering, he wants to know, and you touched on this a little bit, but you go into more detail or about what you know about how far away was the flint chert brought to the sandhill? Like, what was the distance between that?
What we know is that within the immediate area, and when I say that, maybe 4 or 5 miles, there are no chert outcrops that close to us. The bigger, nicer chert outcrops are 20 miles away. The thing, and that's over in Kolha. Now, a lot of people have in Mesoamerican archaeology know the name Kolha. because that's where Harry Schaefer worked and Tom Hester worked very, very much back in the 80s. Fred Valdez worked there. So that's really the hot spot for very high quality chert manufacture back in the Maya days. And the chert outcrops there are incredible. The interesting thing though is what we see. I should have pointed it out more. The raw material that we're seeing in the paleo and some of the low points is really identified and really recognizable to me, at least. And I think they were using maybe 4 main quarries. I have no idea where they are. I've looked, but I can't find them. And it's not Kohlha. So that's the answer is they were regularly using, I think, at least 3, maybe 4 sources over and over again. But I don't know. I've just not found them yet.
Those are all the questions I have in chat. If there's anybody on Zoom that has a question for Mike, feel free to, the floor is now open.
I do, Mike. When's your next visit out to next visit to Belize?
The way we've done it is John well, usually I've gone by myself. In March of the year, we go spend a week there, make sure, just visit with the people, make sure our permits are good and things like that. Because we've got the same small group of workers every year. And for the last 2 years, the 23 season was for 3 weeks in March and early June. And then the 24 season was 3 weeks in May. What did I say? 23 was May and early June. And then 24 was 3 weeks in May, 25th through I'm sorry, May 5th through the 26th. Because when you get permitted, you can't start before that and you got to be out by that. So, but yeah, I mean, we're committed for at least 2 more years.
Okay.
But in the meantime, we're doing a lot of background work year round.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Hey, are there any more questions?
I was gonna say, yeah, there's another question that just came in from chat. Jack wants to know if your reproductions are made from Belize chert.
Let me see. Yes. Well, the little Clovis on the left is that's from Belize. The orange stuff on the fishtail, I think, is from southern Yucatan. And then the red, I should have put the other one in there. I've got another one just like it that's made from Belize chert. That's actually silicified coral from Florida. But
you have a lot of casts of these artifacts, right?
Yeah, I've when I was loaned some of the stuff, actually in the before we started, when I started dealing with some of the collectors, some of them loaned me some pieces, and I was able to get some casts made. I don't know that you can see that. That's a cast of a big sawmill point.
Wow.
It's I don't know where it is. I don't know where it is now because I gave it back to the collector, but he did at least let me document it. So yeah, I've probably got about I don't know, 15 of those, that at least I may not know where they are, but, you know, I've got them photographed and casted. So yeah.
Mhm.
Very
Okay.
cool.
Are there any more questions?
Yeah, Mike, you have a lot of fantastic Clovis artifacts. Do you have any pre-Clovis artifacts?
Not that we can identify.
Okay.
We're certainly looking.
Yeah.
If we found any, the problem with the sand ridge is that sand has moved around a lot. And it's not in any strata. It's not, there's no stratigraphy there for the most part. And that's why we're having real difficulty, without finding anything diagnostic in any controlled excavation. We kind of know the depths of this stuff, where this stuff is coming from. But it, you know, dating, you know, securely dating this stuff is going to be a real, it's going to be a real challenge.
I
Just
understand.
because of where it's coming from.
Okay, thanks.
And there's no organics either. There's,
No.
I mean, we can, those big pine trees, like I was saying, those big pine trees that were cut down, when a big pine tree or a big tree gets cut down, within 10 years, on the surface of the sand, you see an orange pile of mush, which is all that's remnant of any of the organics.
Mhm.
So it's so acidic, and it just, none of the organics last there. So that's a real challenge.
Sounds challenging, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Mhm.
One more question from chat. Jack wants to know, is there an archery horizon?
The bow and arrow didn't come in to Middle America until, I know the Aztecs had it, but the Aztecs are like 1300 AD, only, 500 years ago. About the same time. Well, not that. I think the bow and arrow came into North America, what, about 400 AD, something like that?
Mhm. Yeah.
I think into Texas. I think it came into Texas around 400 to 500 AD. But see, these people, the pre-ceramic people did not have the atlatl either. There was no atlatl technology in Mesoamerica, or I think South America, until the Teotihuacanos had it in about 300 AD. So the atlatl didn't even come into Mesoamerica until, like, 1800 years ago. So the archaic people in Texas had it 10,000 years ago. So it's really odd how some of that technology did not travel into Central America.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
y'all want to see a few of the slides from Crying Woman?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we did the invitational. Was that April?
Yes.
It was like,
Yeah.
what,
Yes, about
First
April.
week in April.
yeah.
First week in
So
April.
I mean, the real highlights of that were working on this great big late paleo earth oven that we've been working on for years.